Hey, it's Beth. Every November, we try to talk on the podcast about how important our conversations behind the paywall are to informing everything else that we're doing in front of the paywall. And we decided today, instead of telling you about that, to just show you. So we are sharing with everyone the spicy bonus episode for this week, where we took the recent elections as a prompt to think about what's going on with both parties. It is an hour and 20 minutes. So you can see it is a true bonus episode. We do not throw things away behind the paywall. In some ways, I think it's where our most important work happens. So we're sharing this with you today. If you would like to learn more about becoming a member of the Spice Cabinet, as we call it, our paywalled community, we would love for you to do that. You can check out the show notes. Thank you for listening.
Hi, I'm Jenny Francis, and I became an executive producer in the spring of 2024. And part of the reason I decided to become an executive producer was because I wanted to be able to connect with other people who were interested in talking about policy and had similar values. And I got to go to dinner with some other executive producers before the Boston Live show, and then connect at the executive producer retreat. And it's been amazing to become friends with other executive producers and just form those relationships.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to what I've decided is the spicy bonus episode, Good News Edition, because we won a bunch of elections, which we're going to talk about more. And the far right is eating itself. So good news all around here today on the spicy bonus episode.
We have an episode coming out tomorrow with Governor Gretchen Whitmer to talk about the election results. But we haven't really chatted with each other casually about those results. So I wonder, Sarah, I heard you say on the news brief that it's the Georgia Public Utilities Commission race that stood out the most to you. What are your other kind of takes as you've marinated on the results?
Well, I mean, the Mississippi people chimed up quick and were like, hey, there's other good news in other red states, not just the Georgia Public Service Commission. Mississippi, they won a bunch of state and Senate seats, state House and Senate seats. You know, I think I was a little, like, I was not overjoyed because I'm just so nervous about people taking the wrong lessons from this. But I've moderated some. I felt like I have had time to like kind of really look at the results and realize like these margins were huge, like huge, even for blue states. And Virginia's not all the way blue either. New Jersey has lots of red pockets. And you see things like Spotsylvania, you know, voting Democrat for the first time in 50 years. So you see there's lots of, you know, statistics and data and feedback in this that's good. And I do feel like people there's something about the combo of, and we talk about this with Big Gretch. There's something about the combo of Mom Donnie with these two really like security mom, pragmatic female governor-elects that I think keeps people in a sort of, it's going to take all kinds. I really like the Ezra Klein piece, you know, that he wrote right before the election that like, we're just going to have to run in a lot of places and a lot of different ways and a lot of different types of candidates. And I felt like this was like an illustration of that. Like everybody's not going to be a Democratic socialist, and everywhere doesn't need to have a security mom. Like, but we do need to run in more places. That's why I think the Mississippi and the Georgia, you know, places we're not always really putting up candidates is key too. So I just think, just good news all around. Good news all around.
I love seeing those unexpected places where you think the Democratic brand is trash and you say no one can ever win here ever. It gives me a little bit of hope alongside the gerrymandering, which I hate. You know, because I hate the sense that we already know everything's already baked. The only thing we can do is manipulate how the numbers go. To see down ballot races in Georgia go this way, to see those results in Mississippi, that gives me a lot of energy. And it also makes me even more interested in what we're going to talk about in a second, which is like what's going on in the Republican Party, because I think that we've focused so much this year on how the Democrats can change their brand. And in that, it's easy to miss that, like, the Republican brand is in flux too.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as the last election was over, the Republican brand went into flux in a way that I have been looking away from too much.
Well, I think a couple things. One, in so many of these places, it's not like people are, waking up and being like, you know what? I actually am a secret Democrat.
Right.
It's just that there are independent minded, the double hates everywhere. In the, deep red counties of Georgia and Utah and Wyoming and every red state you can imagine, and in the Bronx and in Astoria, there's people who are frustrated all the way around with the political process. But that doesn't mean they're ready to just walk away and let a king take control. So, there's a couple sort of glimmers of things that I don't think you're going to play out in the demo because they're in the demographics because they're vibes. But I really don't think that I've seen some polling on this, but I really don't think you can underplay the destruction of the East Wing. I think tearing down a wing of the White House in the middle of a government shutdown was just, it doesn't matter how low propensity you are. It doesn't matter how low info you are. That breaks through. And you're like, the fuck?
To build a ballroom, Marie Antoinette could not.
And a marble bathroom.
It's a lot. Yeah.
And to dip everything in gold while we're all out here paying 20, 30, 40% more for damn near everything. I just think that is going to get people's attention, and not in a way that's going to make them nihilistic, in a way that's going to make them mad and show up at the polls. So I think that's one thing. And I keep thinking about this thing Matt Iglesias wrote that neither party has internalized this propensity issue that, Democrats are still promoting making voting easier, when really, if you're looking at the polling and the demographics, it should be the opposite. And the same for Republicans. They're still trying to make it hard when they should be making it easier.
Yeah.
It just goes to show that so much of party identity and party policy is baked into old branding or baked into old stories. I think there's a real generational turnover, certainly in the results with Mom Donnie. We're recording today on Thursday. Nancy Pelosi is saying that she's not going to run again. Hallelujah. Praise the Lord. Love Nancy. Love Nancy. It's time to go, man.
It's time to mentor. It's time to be in a different phase of your career. For sure. And enjoy your life.
Lord, she doesn't need another phase of her career. She's in her 80s. No phases. Go home. You don't need to work anymore, babe. You're good. You're solid.
There are a lot of people, though, who hear that and feel like I'm going to be out of purpose. Somebody like Nancy Pelosi, who's flown at that altitude for so long, I don't think she can just sit back and do nothing. The John Boehner path is less traveled, right? The George W. Bush go paint path. Not a lot of people want that for themselves who have done this kind of work. So I'm really happy that she did a term in Congress to just lay back and help other people. And I think whatever version makes her life feel rich and good and much more relaxed, I wish for her on the other side of this.
But that's a failure of our society, that people can't fathom a day that doesn't involve work, or that purpose is defined solely through work. The woman is 87? I don't know how. She's deep into her 80s. She doesn't need to work anymore. And she should show people that that's possible, that you can forget continuing to fly at these altitudes and mentor. How about just show people that there's another way to be in the world that doesn't involve killing yourself and hustling all the time? I would love to see that from her. I would love to see her to present another example of how to be in your 80s. Jesus Christ.
Whatever works for her. She's given enough. I'm not going to ask her to rewire our brains about this. I'm just saying the people I have witnessed who love work the way Nancy Pelosi seems to love work, it is a sacrifice for them to give it up. It is hard for them to step back. I bet this was not an easy decision for her, even as it is the most obvious announcement she could have possibly made. But we got off track. So you're talking about the generational shifts in the Democratic electorate.
Yeah, not in the Democratic electorate. I think the generational shifts are everywhere. Not just in the Democratic electorate. Because I don't think everybody who turned out for Mom Donnie is some dyed-in-the-wool Democrat. like even in the middle of Manhattan or the Bronx or Brooklyn. Like that's not how people identify as much anymore, especially younger people. That's not how my 16-year-old identifies. So I think there's just a lot going on. But overall, I do think that, the headline is people are pissed. They don't like the immigration. Latinos don't like the immigration shift from this administration. People don't like the complete and total neglecting of affordability. And I don't care if he comes out with some big announcement. You can't undip the Oval Office from being gold everywhere while everything is more expensive for people. It's like he's just done. I don't think people are pissed about policy. I mean, I think they're pissed about some policy. I think they're pissed about immigration policy and the approach to ICE. I think there's like some real choices they've made. But it's also the way he talks, the way they post. It's part and parcel of the whole of. And again, if you've ever enjoyed politics for more than 2 presidential cycles, it was wholly and completely predictable. It felt inevitable. It felt like they were winning forever. I have lived through so many cycles like that in DC and other places in my life where it feels like this is the last day and this party's ascendant and it's going to be like that. I mean, when they were writing that bullshit 100-year plan, miss me with that bullshit. That's not how politics works. And so, but I mean, the thing is though, if you're like me, like you've lived through so many of these, the lows don't hit as hard, but also the highs don't hit as hard either, because you're just like, yep, but we won't be up here forever either, like this is just how it goes.
Yeah, this doesn't feel like a super high to me. It feels good. It feels like on track, but it doesn't feel super high because of the places where these elections took place. The margin to me is the story that it was this big, says that maybe there's something underneath it that can carry forward into a higher turnout election. I spent some time this morning thinking back to where I was about a year ago when I went to the No Labels conference the end of last year and heard from a whole lot of Republican legislators who were really feeling themselves and feeling excited about policy. Yeah. Now, they were meeting the room where it was. The No Labels room is a policy-oriented room, right? But they were talking about how they felt like they were really going to come in this time and fix some things. They were going to fix Social Security. They were going to make progress on reducing the debt and deficit. Like there was a list of specific ideas that people had felt had been like jammed for so long. And because Donald Trump is a person who's willing to break some things and who defies convention, they thought this is our chance to get in and do stuff. They felt like the Trump team was listening to them. I remember Susan Collins on the stage saying that she had sat down with Elon Musk and explained how appropriations work to him. And so she felt like there was really going to be a partnership here. And these elections, to me, are a great indicator that the public heard a lot of that and have witnessed problem making, not problem solving, for the most part from this president. And I think that immigration is the toughest of these because it's easy to be a binary thinker. We either have open borders or we have ICE agents outside of schools and chasing people down on Halloween. But there is just a lot of that energy of like, you said you were going to help. Why aren't you helping? Why are you making everything worse? And there's such an obvious misunderstanding from Trump about the economy. I think he's ruining his businessman reputation. If you are a farmer, China deciding today in November that they'll buy soybeans again, maybe next year, like that doesn't do you any good, right? There's a cycle, like the tariffs on, off is totally divorced from the way that people actually make and ship and sell products in the world. So I think the public is just getting like, he said he was going to help and he's just made it worse. And that's really frustrating. And so, sure, I'll vote for the other guy this time. Who cares?
Yeah. I mean, I think history will look back at this second Trump term, and particularly the first 2 years, as just a complete missed opportunity. Like just a complete missed opportunity. He could have done a lot. He could have made a lot of changes. I mean, he has. He's torn a lot of things apart. And I was too young when Reagan came in and tore a lot of things apart. But I think Reagan reshaped government in ways we are still grappling with because there was so much more care and precision in what he did. I don't agree with any of it. We're still out here dealing with air traffic controller staffing issues because of his, fight with the union back in the 80s. So, but it just, there was like a more of a plan, a purpose. I don't know. He changed things, but he didn't break everything in the process. And it just feels like Trump didn't even have a vision for what he wanted to change. It was just tear it apart, tear it apart, tear it apart. And they could have fixed some things. They really could have fixed Social Security. They really could have fixed, I've been listening to your interviews a few weeks ago with the employees affected by Doge. And it's like, everybody's like, there was an opportunity here. And it was just completely and totally missed.
Yeah. And I think that's apparent to the public. I also think that to give the people running this time credit, not just to say it was because Trump has been a disappointment, but to give them credit, I think that Democrats are learning how to build a positive campaign that isn't so policy focused, that is more about place and community. I really love this thread from Anand Giridharadas, who is Priya Parker's husband, focused on how the Mamdani campaign was about gathering. The guy who writes the books like Oliver Berkman, Meditation for Mortals, that guy like restacked this today saying, was this the first post-social media election? Which I thought was a really interesting take because Mamdani did social media so well, but he also did more traditional media. And he did do a lot in person, on the ground, asking people for things. I loved his commercials that were like, don't send us more money. That's not what we need. We have gotten the money that we can get and use. Here's what we need from you. And this thread that we'll link here was just a really great way of saying people want to be included. Voting for the most part has felt way too much like a sales pitch instead of like an invitation. And this campaign did a really good job making it an invitation.
Yeah, I wouldn't even call him good at social media. I think it's probably more precise to say he's good at vertical video because TikTok is not social media and neither is Instagram Reels. There's nothing social about it. That's why people were so anxious to come out and actually volunteer and meet up. We were sitting with Griffin last night and he was like, I hate the destruction of community. Like that's like his new, unifying theory is it's all about the construction of community and the desire for belonging. And I definitely think kids who like him have grown up inside, very online inside the internet in a certain way. What I see is that because they were so in it and they were so native, they flamed out faster. They're just fuck it all. I don't want any part of this, and so anybody that can speak to that, I really want to see those peak social media or peak media, online media, platforms, those numbers, peak and go down like they have every other place in the world in North America, then I think we'll know we're good and truly saved. But yeah, I think that people want to be asked to do things. I see this I think his campaign is one other manifestation of what I am seeing over and over in my life, which is people are ready to show up and help and do and not just write a check and not just share a post. They want to show up. They want to be asked to do things. They are ready to try. They're ready to push themselves. They're ready to exert some effort, just generally.
Well, and I think that people want to be asked to do things that connect with them. I say this about being on boards all the time. I do not want to be on a board where I just show up and vote to approve the minutes and the financial report and go home. If I'm going to serve on a board, I want to serve on a board because I have something the organization needs. And I'm going to get real calls doing some problem solving about those things. And I think that's what people want from campaigns too. I personally just cannot donate and write postcards or be asked to knock doors or make calls anymore. It's just, that's not where I am in my life.
Well, knock doors is a show up and volunteer kind of thing, though.
Yeah, but it's good. Some people are good at it and I'm not, right? I want to engage in ways that I'm good at. And I think other people want to engage in ways that they're good at. There has just been this script. These are the only ways you do politics. And I think the more you invite people to do politics in different ways, the better that is. And I think a lot of the candidates on the Democratic ticket did that this time. And I think that's something to build off of for the midterms for sure.
Well, and I just think it's maybe we can all get out of the one solution space. There isn't going to be one solution. That's why I think Ezra's editorial was so good. I'm a little concerned with the move on and the liberal groups bubbling up in all this news reporting about pushing Congress people not to negotiate, not to deal with the shutdown. I don't want that. I just want to say that right now. I do not want the results of this election to be moveon.org is muscular again. I just don't. That's not what I'm looking for. I don't think that served us well the first time. I want those Congress people listening to their constituents, not liberal groups. So if their constituents want a compromise, then they should work towards that. This is not the solution to keep nationalizing everything through the lens of moveon.org. Abigail Spanberger and Mikey Sherrill and Zohran Mamdani did not win because they were listening to progressive political groups. I did not love that reporting. I was like, no.
And I would read it the opposite way. I think Democrats have an opportunity here because Republicans have blown it. I think on the other side of that opportunity, it is not going to be good enough to say, well, but until we win more, we're not going to be able to do anything for you. I think you should take this moment and say, no, we can fix things. Actually, these election results gave us some momentum and some bargaining power, and we're going to go in and we're going to get something done now. People want the government to reopen. If they truly start really messing with flights the way it looks like they are going to next week.
Not next week, tomorrow.
Is it tomorrow?
It's tomorrow.
If they start messing with flights, the snap is breaking through. Like people are attuned to the consequences of this government shutdown. And while it inured to Democrats' benefit in this election, I don't think that is going to be static, right? So to me, today is the day. Let's get some deals done. Let's make this happen.
I mean, I don't want them to reopen it just to reopen it. I do think that they should actually deal. You have a place to demand it. And the problem is they have momentum and they have the capacity and the political will right now to demand things. But if Donald Trump continues to say the only solution is Senate Republicans kill the filibuster, then that's not on Democrats. He's bringing the Senate Republicans into his office and basically yelling at them as they set their stone face to get rid of the filibuster. So, if he still holds so much of the key to opening the government back up. And so if he still believes that this is just you cave and you don't get anything out of it, then that's really not on Democrats. I think that they should negotiate.
I'm not saying it is. That's not my position. I'm just
saying they're in a tough spot. I'm not saying they're not in a tough spot. I just don't want them to take direction from moveon.org.
Agreed. I also don't want the lesson to be hold out forever because we feel more powerful now. We won't I want everybody working. Honestly, one of the most compelling things that I have seen all week was when I watched Marjorie Taylor Greene on The View saying, what disgusts me right now is that we're not working. We should be working. You're working. Our staffs are working. We should be working. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's going on for a long time. Air traffic controllers are now, I think, a paycheck and a half out. They're going to get another big donor. Also, I cannot imagine that sits well with military members to know some just big fat cat wrote them a big old check and paid their bills. Gross. Nobody wants that. That's gross. That's
corruption.
Because what's that person going to demand in return?
That's right. Nobody does that out of the generosity of
their own heart. Yeah, no. And so I think, like, if the flights, I have always thought they would not push it much past Thanksgiving. They cannot have this air traffic mess. I mean, that video of the TSA line at Houston was shocking. That's not going to work over Thanksgiving. And so, but again, I still do not see any separation between Donald Trump and the Republican Party. I don't know how far they're going to follow him off this cliff. And to a certain extent, even with this political momentum, there is only so much. Even if they're not demanding anything else, even if they just stick to their current demands with regards to the healthcare subsidies, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that the Republicans still don't budge on anything. I mean, I think there's some members trying to negotiate, but if Johnson won't call the House back, I'm a little worried, is what I guess I'm trying to express here.
Well, let's talk about Republicans. I think Mike Johnson is paralyzed by fear right now.
Well, he's backed himself into a corner.
He absolutely has. And if I were him, I would be tempted to hide in that corner, because where is the friendly place for you to go? Mm-hmm. You know that there aren't solutions. And I'm not saying this with any sympathy for Mike Johnson. I think he is one of the most cynical political actors I've ever seen. And I've watched Mitch McConnell my whole life. Mm-hmm. But so I'm not feeling sorry for him. I'm just saying he knows the White House does not have solutions here. He also knows he cannot afford to get crossways with the White House. And the influencer culture that has been the backbone for House Republicans in particular for the last, 5 years at least, more than that, is really fractured. I think they believed on the other side of Charlie Kirk's murder that they were going to be unified and more powerful than ever. And that is not how it's unfolded.
Yeah, in case you don't follow this, and good for you. It started almost immediately after his murder, particularly with Candace Owens. Candace Owens sort of claimed the mantle of being close to Charlie Kirk and started to imply that his murder wasn't just a lone actor, that it was particularly the work of, fill in your mad lib of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. That's her bread and butter now. So, to me, even though Nick Fuentes, the epicenter of so much of this, kind of distanced himself and was like, it wasn't the Groypers in the immediate aftermath, you still had other people like Candace Owens, like, trotting this stuff out. Then, and this continues to build, you have, like, one of Charlie Kirk's close allies releasing that letter he sent to Netanyahu, basically saying, like, you're screwing up here. You're losing young Republicans. They are distancing themselves from Israel. Here's what I would do. Then you have Tucker Carlson, for some reason, who knows why Tucker Carlson does anything he does, has Nick Fuentes on for like 2 hours, like a long time, on his show, and kind of cleans him up, dust off the worst of the radicalism and I don't think there's an ideology when it comes to Nick Fuentes. I think Nick Fuentes is a nihilist and just wants to say whatever is most offensive to get people's attention. And so just make a laundry list of the most offensive things someone could say about women or Black people or Jews or Muslims or anyone, and he said it. He didn't say it on Tucker's show because they were cleaning him up, but he said it. Then Ben Shapiro, very popular right-wing media figure, also Jewish, does just a complete takedown. I listened to it. It's a 45-minute episode. A lot of it is just quotes from Nick Fuentes, quotes from Tucker Carlson, quotes from the people Tucker Carlson has had on his show. And then Ben Shapiro filling in and saying, this is who he is. He's a bad friend. He's, to Charlie Kirk, he is morally corrupt and bankrupt and soulless, and he wants to platform ideologies that will, and people like Nick Fuentes that will tear the conservative movement apart. And so this is just continuing to play out with the far right, and I was thinking about this all week, particularly when it comes to Republican congressmen and the Trump campaign and the Trump movement. The Groypers they're not large enough in numbers that I sincerely believe they are worried about them electorally. It's almost like it's just the muscle. It's like what they need to make any threat they make stick. Who do you think's calling in the SWAT teams? Who do you think's sending the death threats? It's the nihilistic, violent, fringe of this movement that will be the muscle to make everything, to keep these Republican congressmen in line or to back them up when people come after them. It's I don't think this is even an electoral strategy. I think it's just they need somebody to be the actual crazy that keeps their train running. You know what I'm saying? And so they're kind of they've always been winking and nodding at this group. Tucker took it way further and has forced the hand of people like Ben Shapiro who care about Israel, are Jewish, but are also in the same movement with people like Candace Owens and have to reckon with that some way, shape, or form.
If I think of the Republican Party as it stands today as a body, I think that the Groypers, the sort of online influencers, and especially a certain category of online influencer, they're like the digestive system of the Republican Party's body. It's a little unseemly, but it's necessary. It's part of how they get low propensity voters to turn out in big numbers in presidential elections. It's part of how they get people fired up about things that are useful to them. It gets them the call volume that they want when they're trying to confirm Pete Hegseth. They're dealing in the yuck of the party, but everybody recognizes that there will always be a yuck of a party, and so we tolerate it. What I think is becoming increasingly unsustainable is the way that people like Kevin Roberts are connecting that system to other systems. The Mitch McConnells of the world have wanted to maintain a real distance from the digestive system of the party always, right? And they want to be the skin of the Republican Party, glowing and divorced from all that ugliness. And Kevin Roberts at Heritage this week made that impossible by coming out and defending Tucker Carlson vigorously in a completely unnecessary video that no one asked for. I watched this video thinking, I don't know who this plays to, because the people who are super, super online, the people who love Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes, and those are different groups, right? But people in that ecosystem are going to look at Kevin Roberts and see a complete stiff who is totally elite and wants to just manipulate this whole system for whatever he can get out of it. But he makes this video defending Fuentes and free speech and saying that Tucker Carlson's very important to the Heritage Foundation, and the Heritage Foundation, which he runs, is the intellectual center of the conservative movement. And that made it impossible for Mitch McConnell and others to try to be the skin. So you have Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley and McConnell himself saying, no, that we do not have room in the Republican Party for anti-Semitism and for the kind of values that Nick Fuentes represents. I was really struck by Mitch McConnell saying, in direct response to the Kevin Roberts video, the intellectual backbone of the conservative movement is only as strong as the values it defends. Last I checked, conservatives should feel no obligation to carry water for anti-Semites and apologists of America-hating autocrats. And so there are all these pieces, right? Who gets the economic benefit of being Charlie Kirk's successor? Who starts to make a play to be Donald Trump's successor? And the people in the orbits of those folks who are making those plays. And then you do have some actual worldview disagreements, foreign policy disagreements. What does America first mean? What does free speech require of us? So it's just a lot of fracturing all starting to come to a head, I think.
Yeah. I want to call out the anti-Semitism first. This is not just a problem on the far right side of the political spectrum. I think this generational shift in views towards Israel are playing out in really intense ways, and not surprisingly manifesting in horrendous anti-Semitism coming from both the left and the far right, far left and far right. And so I want to make sure and just like name that, because I know there are a lot of people that, you know, are feeling vulnerable around the election results in New York City. And, you know, that's a generational break within the Jewish community itself around how they feel about Zohar Mamdani, right? Like, because of this, you know, just horrendous growth in anti-Semitism. The casualness in which, you know, you don't have to go all the way to Nick Fuentes. You can look through that group chat of the Young Republicans naming some just disgusting views around Nazism and Hitler, and just, you know, that's another thing Tucker Carlson platformed, is this like complete Holocaust denier. I'm not going to use the historian because that's not what he is. So I think all of this is just this ugly manifestation of a lot of really dramatic shifts in policy, in the parties themselves, which are just, again, trying to process a lot of dramatic changes in our own global and domestic politics. So, you know, that to me is like the siren that's going off, and it's like the panic button, because this anti-Semitism and anti-woman, you know, that the dude from Crossfire would be hosting somebody that's like, just rape the women. That's what they want. Just rape them. It's wild. But to me, especially on the right, that is part and parcel of Donald Trump. You don't get to compartmentalize the cruelty, the free-flowing. I mean, it's just, you can't separate the fact that he seems authentic to people because he will say whatever the hell he wants, from the fact that he would, you know, I could shoot someone in Times Square and punch them at my rallies, and there are good people on both sides. Like, and also, you don't really disconnect how we got here from Mitch McConnell all along, back to Nixon winking and nodding at white supremacists to get them to vote their way. So, like, there's a part of me that wants to even sit in with Ben Shapiro and this whole circle and be like, you are harvesting the seeds you have been sowing for decades. Conservatism is built on a fear of change. I wrote about this in Substack, like this, like all this talk about Western civilization, like that goes all the way back to any change, to anybody else being welcomed at the table. Oh no, Western civilization is at risk. Be afraid. I've got some groups you can blame. Let's start with immigrants, Jews, women, Black people. You know, it's just, to me, it's like, it's a messy ball. And also, it's not. It's just a clear fucking path every time, from like the foundational elements of a lot of conservatism that is always a little bit saddling up to, if you don't like this change and you want to conserve our values, here's some easy groups to blame. And by the way, we'll protect you from them, so vote for us. And so, you know, it's so frustrating, because I feel like it's not that there are stupid people in this movement. Ben Shapiro is not a stupid person. He just isn't. Like, I don't know about Tucker Carlson, but Ben Shapiro is not stupid. I do believe Nick Fuentes is stupid, and I just want to be like, because I think how you get to the Kevin Roberts of it all is there are some, you know, I think certain parts of this movement are like, oh shit, we've abandoned free speech. We're making the same mistakes the woke left is, which is definitely an argument that Ben Shapiro made explicitly in his podcast. And so, like, you see a lot of, like, I'm not canceling Tucker. I'm not canceling Nick Fuentes. I'm not canceling Tucker. I'm not canceling. They can say whatever they want, but I can say in response, this is disgusting. So that, to me, is where the heritage foundation of it all comes in, is I think that they really want to be seen as free speech warriors. But I think they're going to continue to eat each other alive. I think they're going to continue to fight over Charlie Kirk's legacy. I don't think either JD Vance is up for this moment because he's a morally bankrupt chameleon and he'll just shift and change and do whatever he can to keep the Groypers on his side, but also be the face of TPUSA. Who knows? Or because he's morally bankrupt and has no consistency at all, it'll all fall apart. I don't know. Who the hell knows?
I think it's just going to keep shifting. I mean, if you sat down with someone like Ben Shapiro and had this conversation, it would quickly turn into, well, here's the pox in your house. It would.
Always.
And that wouldn't be necessarily wrong, because both parties are bodies and have their own versions of the digestive system, or how, whatever you want to do with this metaphor. I'm struck again thinking about the View appearance from Marjorie Taylor Greene, because she said a lot of both parties have failed. And Joy Behar said to her, but the Republicans are worse. And while I happen to agree with that, I was also struck by the fact that that was not a becoming thing to say in this conversation. It seemed really shitty, because it did seem like Marjorie Taylor Greene was trying harder in this conversation than the people who that's a firing squad for her to walk into, right? That's a group of people she knows. None of them voted for Donald Trump. She knows, and she said this to her credit, like, you all have bashed me on this show a lot. So she walks in there and she's trying pretty hard, whether it's self-serving, like whatever you think about what she's doing. If I'm trying to be the voter here, not the political analyst, just a normal person watching this, it was not impressive or persuasive to hear Joy say, but yours is worse. It seemed childish and unproductive. And so what I hope we can all do is look at this landscape within the Republican Party, look at where we are with the Democratic Party right now, look at where things are. I was texting with a friend last night about how it feels like a lot of things are crumbling in a lot of spaces right now. It's almost like COVID. I thought COVID was going to be such a catalyst for change. And I'm realizing there are a lot of places where COVID just delayed a lot of change. It put a lot of things on pause that were on a trajectory already. And I feel like we're just starting to see sort of the other side of that trajectory. But here it all is, what's the next iteration? And for Republican leaders, I am interested in what their choices are, because that's what it comes down to. This is all always going to be there in all segments of American life. What you saw with Democrats in both of the last presidential elections was a moment for making a decision, and they made one. And that decision alienated some people, and they knew it. But every decision alienates some people. You have to make it anyway. So when they consolidated around Biden, they knew it was going to piss progressives off. They did it anyway, and then he accepted the fallout of that and made his overtures and outreach to try to bring them back in. When it was clear that Biden's age was such a problem, way late, but finally, they made a decision. It pissed some people off. They accepted the consequences and moved forward. I think the trouble with the Republican Party, especially as Donald Trump is waning, is he's the only person who makes decisions over there.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a moment where it's clear there are a lot of decisions to be made. And their biggest problem, I think, and I heard Noah Rothman say this, I can't take credit for it, is that Donald Trump enjoys the drama of a fight. He's not going to help. He's probably going to make all this worse because he enjoys the drama of it.
Well, it's not just that Donald Trump enjoys the drama of the fight. It's rewarded in our attention economy. You cannot divorce the presence of Donald Trump over the last 10 years from the technology that has run all of our lives. So it's just, that to me is the piece that's so hard. Although I do think those habits, the platforms themselves, and the media is changing. back to the Ezra essay I like so much. Surprise. I do think it would be helpful for all of us to think about this spectrum. Okay, so if we're talking about all the way, all the way to the left, all the way to the right, and that there is the presence on both sides of that political spectrum of just arguably like almost nihilistic, like almost the horseshoe bend, right? That's why you get to Nick Fuentes and you get really weird. I mean, I think an excellent accompaniment, if people haven't listened to it yet, is Your More to Say with Cy Cantrell about like, you get ideology mixes that don't make sense to people, like trans fascist. Okay, so like, and you know why? Because this is it's not about ideology. It's just it's a very nihilistic viewpoint that nobody wants, that nobody's here for. Okay, I don't think not nobody, because people. Well, no, you know what? I don't think that there is some need within the human species for nihilism. I think it is a reaction, and it is not a permanent condition. Okay, so if you have both of these in, so let's just say, okay, this is the manifestation of a really shitty internet environment and also some lived realities, definitely some choices that were made about how we're going to talk and treat young men, particularly in online spaces. Okay, so but we're going to just chop off those ends and say that extremes always exist inside ideologies, and they were rewarded inside our attention economy, and hopefully that's changing. Okay? And we're going to click in a little bit, right? We're going to click in the spectrum we're not to like party activists. And I think there's something we all have to decide about that moment with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Because I think there are a lot of reasonable people, many of whom listen to the show, who have strong party identification. Maybe they left the Republican Party over Donald Trump, and now they are really locked in with the Democratic Party. But there's a lot of strong party identification. And we are going to have to, and I think there is a hunger. I think that's why Abigail Spanberger, in her victory speech, the excellent politician she is, talked about bipartisanship. There's a real hunger for unity. There's a real hunger for inviting people back in. And so, I don't know what the answer to this is on the Republican Party. I do think that the likes of Ben Shapiro, I think a little bit of their answer is being explicit and stop winking and nodding and being explicitly turning away from this far right? But I think on our side of the political spectrum, we do have to think, what are we going to say to someone who Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is trying? Are we going to say, because if we're all waiting around for Marjorie Taylor Greene to say, you were so right and I was so wrong and I'm a bad person for voting for Donald Trump. And if we're waiting for that equivalent in all the people in our lives, family members who said something hurtful to us, community members who posted something hateful, like if we're all waiting for that, we're going to be, I'm going to use a really crude expression my father uses a lot. You can shit in one hand and wait in the other and see what fills up first. It's not going to happen. And so we need to think about, what is our answer going to be? If we don't like Joey Behar's answer, which I agree with you, feels small, even though it's true. I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree that under any rubric, any Democrat, Donald Trump's behavior is worse. But what's the answer to the person who we're trying to persuade, who is probably going to keep their identity as a Republican? Identity is hard to change. It's just hard. So what is within our own hearts and souls and minds? Like, what are we going to say to Marjorie Taylor Greene? I'd invite Marjorie Taylor Greene on Pantsuit Politics.
100%.
What would we say to her? And I'm not going to say, I know you're just mad because they didn't let you run for Senate. I don't think that's true.
Because I think that's small too.
I think that's a piece of it. Of course it is. But who cares what the catalyst is, selfish or otherwise, to introduce people's change?
Who cares is where I am. Like, who cares? I don't care what the motivation for this is. Our government is not open right now. I am looking only for doors just one door that we can walk through together, and then maybe the next one and the next one. What bothers me about the your side is worse answer, and a lot of the commentary out there about Marjorie Taylor Greene right now, is that what you hear in it is exactly the criticism of Democrats that brought us all this analysis about what Democrats can do about their brand this year. It is people stopping to decide in their hearts and minds if she is a good person.
Yeah.
And I just don't care if she's a good person because she's not my neighbor or my friend. She is a representative who does seem to be listening to her constituents. She is going to bring things to the House floor that I think are abhorrent, but she is going to bring some things that I could vote for. That's what the House floor is supposed to look like. You know, if she has turned from using social media to poison people with ideas and is now saying, I have been poisoned with some ideas, and is saying, you have too, no matter who you voted for or what a good person you think you are, you have too, then I'm here to listen and work with her. The whole discussion right now feels to me like a lot of people in media and in elite spaces going, she's trying to get uncanceled. Should we uncancel her? And that's 2 years ago's thinking. To me, the thinking today is, okay, where can she partner with people to do something good? One next good thing. Can she help get the government reopened? Can she help keep the ACA subsidies in place until somebody has a better idea? Can she help get the Epstein files released? Can she help us stop providing weapons that are used against innocent people throughout the world in conflicts that have nothing to do with us? Fantastic. Like, if she's open for business on those things, so am I. I don't need to make a pronouncement about her journey and its sources. And I honestly think more people would be inclined to run for office and serve if we could walk back from a little bit of that, you know? So I would say we don't have to say anything. We can just hear her out and ask her to hear us out and not resolve this cavern of difference between us, but just let it be and see what happens next.
Well, two things. I mean, I do think that as much as I would like to compartmentalize the extremes because of our attention economy, I do think we have to grapple with both, you know, the Nick Fuentes and the role people like Marjorie Taylor Greene played in poisoning the well. I don't think that is they're irredeemable. I don't think the answer is what we were trying to do, which is shame them into oblivion and say that good people support this narrative. I think what's interesting about this moment with Nick Fuentes on Tucker Carlson is that what Ben Shapiro did was really smart, right? Instead, but even though I don't think he was saying anything that different from Kevin Roberts, right? Like he was really just trying to set both of them, the theme I heard was, well, not the consistent theme, but both of them said, we're not going to cancel them. We're not going to say they can't say this. And you know what? I agree with that. Let that dirty, nasty shit be said so that someone like Ben Shapiro can go, this is dirty, nasty shit. Want me to put it all together for you so you can see how disgusting it is? I think there has to be, because when we say there's a narrative, like January 6th, and when we say, so we decided this is the narrative about January 6th, we arrested all these people, this is it, lock in, get on board, and if you divvy at any place from the narrative, you're a bad person and forever and always, no matter how much you try to change like Marjorie Taylor Greene, you're out because you supported January 6th. And what has happened? When you lock in the narrative, it's easier to tear down. So what are they doing? They freed all the people. They're completely rewriting the narrative. And if on their side you don't lock into their narrative, then you're shit and irredeemable and they'll kick you out of the party. And so we're just in this death spiral around narratives instead of saying, no, say your stupid shit and I'll tell you why it's wrong. You know what I mean? Like, I think that we have to figure out, because of our attention economy, what we're going to do around these extreme views. Because Marjorie Taylor Greene has had some extreme views. No doubt about it.
Yeah, but who's the we? So to me, I can say Nick Fuentes has a right to speak even though what he says is abhorrent. And I have no problem saying that. I believe it. And I do believe it's better for people to see it than not see it. I think it's good that Politico published those group chats. And I think it's good that people know that Paul Ingrassia, who Trump nominated for a whistleblower type job in the federal government, has said he has a real Nazi streak. I think it's important for people to know that and for all that to be out there. So I am there on free speech. I am also there on the fact that we, meaning party leaders, need to decide what drives the bus for us. And so would I say, you know what, Marjorie Taylor Greene has really made a turn. She should probably be Speaker of the House. No, no. When I am thinking about myself in relation to her, it's, am I open to hearing more from her? Yes. Would I vote with her if I were in Congress on things where we agreed? Yes. Would I co-sponsor a bill with her? Yes. You know, they're like, those are the pieces where we have to decide, but in totally different contexts. Like, I think one of the gifts of technology, you know, for all of the ways in which I am critical of it, and I do have a real get off my lawn streak right now that I'm working on in my heart, but for all the ways that I'm critical of it, a gift is that it really is all out there now. Like, you really can see all of it. And what I hope that I can personally get better at is actually seeing it, not just being overwhelmed by it. And I'm curious if we're going to see more people who are just clear-eyed leaders, whatever they stand for, emerging. Like, that's what I think about Abigail Spanberger. You can disagree with her on literally everything, but I do think that if shit were really going down, you'd be like, what does she think? She'll at least she'll make a call, you know, she'll figure out how to organize around that call. She'll get something done. And we have had years now of yappers instead of doers driving politics. And I wonder if we can get to a place where, like, I think it's good. And because I think he is also very cynical, I think it's good that Ted Cruz felt enough pressure to need to respond on this. Because I do think Ted Cruz wants to be a leader. I disagree with him on nearly everything. And I don't think he's a good person, you know, from what I have seen. But I think he wants to be a leader. And more of that is welcome to me.
I feel like it's this paradox right now that I don't know how to wrap my arms around, and that I feel like a word that is coming up over and over and over again is virtues. I listened to a talk from Cory Booker and John Meacham about civic virtues. Ben Shapiro used the word virtue, conservative values, conservative virtues. Like, there's this desire, because Donald Trump is virtueless. That's why he stood up at Charlie Kirk's funeral and said, I hate my enemies. I'm not doing that one. He doesn't have any virtues. And I think, I don't care who you are, I bet Ben Shapiro would admit that to you. You know, and so I think there is a hunger. I think that's why James Tallarico is hitting. Like, people want to hear an articulation of virtues that we are striving for. I do think that has to be calibrated with an acceptance that we will all fall short from time to time, and that none of us are a perfect articulation of that virtue. And you know what? I kind of see that wisdom in the populace and in these exit polls from this election. We had the attorney general candidate in Virginia send some really, the Democratic nominee who won, Johnson, some really horrific, violent text messages about his opponents in the Virginia Assembly. The speaker, I think it was the Speaker of the House. And look, I said to you, I would look like a real monster if people had unadulterated access to my text messages. I just would. I'm just going to be honest.
We all would. Every single person.
I'm hyperbolic, okay? I'm hyperbolic. And so there was this, but he still won. And you had people, like 40% of people saying that was unacceptable. And then like 20% of them voting for him anyway. So I think there's this moment that we're coming to where we're like, okay, maybe the emphasis is not on a cult of personality that's going to be the perfect articulation of everything we're looking for. Maybe we need to start articulating the virtues we're looking for with the, clear-eyed understanding that people fall short. And of course they'll fall short. And of course they'll fall short in a place like politics where compromises are inevitable. And this is not the place to exert any sort of perfection. And I do feel, I heard threads of that with Sarah McBride. I'm hearing a lot of threads of that in the conversations Ezra's having on his podcast. I think there's just a lot of this, like, we have to articulate virtues we are striving for and ideas that we want to aim as a party, as a leader, as a people. And I think that's really, really good. And I think that the Republican Party or the conservative movement thought that the assassination of Charlie Kirk was some sort of cheat for this process. And it's not. It's a hard process, especially when you have sacrificed so many of previously articulated conservative virtues on the altar of Donald Trump's cult of personality. And that doesn't mean they're worse. That just means that they have a real pickle on their hands that I do not envy. I do not envy. I do not think the Democratic Party is without its own toxicity and branding problems and mistakes. I do. But the way that it's very different. It's very different. Again, not worse necessarily, but it's a very, very different problem that they are facing.
The Democratic Party did have a struggle after Obama, right? Because he was a defining, it is not the same as Trump, but it is in the flavor of this person is what we're about right now. And I think Obama, like Trump in some ways, didn't do a whole lot to bring other people along with him. We're still talking about the same team of staffers that surrounded Obama and that sort of defined that movement. So I think moving away from cult of personality for both parties is really, really important, even as I know that personality is what gets people motivated to vote if they don't really care about politics. All of this is like such a tension. It's interesting because I feel like you and I've had so many conversations this year where you've been like, I don't want it to be about moralizing. And then here we are landing on virtue as a characteristic we're looking for. And I think within the voting public, yes, people want aspirational, articulated virtues. I think again, like I know people loved that Sarah McBride talked about Ted Lasso. I think that that's true. Ted Lasso caught because people do want to hear about values and aspirations, imperfect ones from imperfect people, but still trying. And I think that a pretty deeply held virtue within American culture, going back to Alexis de Tocqueville and running forward is a sense that, like, I want to be able to define a lot of this for myself. And so I got to respect that you want to define a lot of this for yourself too. Like, I think plurality, as hard as it is a virtue that we hold on to here. So part of what I think backfires so miserably in the Heritage Foundation strain of conservatism is a complete disrespect for pluralism. And I think that ultimately loses out in whatever this war is right now. On the Democratic side, I respect how people are doing a pretty good job of being like, you know what? There is enough room for Spanberger and Mamdani on the same night, and we'll celebrate both of them because different places have different needs and welcome different expressions of how to meet those needs.
Well, it's not just a hostility towards pluralism. There is a racist strand to what they are advocating through Project 2025 and what they have done in this administration. They are targeting women. They are targeting Black people. They are eliminating. So when they look and they want to fire people, they just go, well, who's the Black person? Who's the woman? I mean, it's just so obvious, and that's not a virtue of the American people. And I think I do think moralizing says that there's one way to be, and it's like me. Virtue says there are ideas we all strive for. How we get there might be different, but we are striving for them. And I do think that we can all walk and chew gum and see the difference. And, this idea, and moralizing is weaponized, right? Virtue is humbling for everyone. And I think the more that we can strive through and towards a model of virtue that says there isn't, one way to be a good person in American politics, including some of the most difficult questions around race and gender and ethnicity and immigration and all of this stuff, the better. And I think what you're seeing with these candidates, by focusing on affordability and people's lived existence, backed up by some articulated virtue, you're calibrating in a healthier way that allows more people to participate and to interact and to get involved. And that's why it was such a high turnout election.
And to me, the way I square, yes, I want to strive for virtue in my leaders, and also I don't care what's motivating Marjorie Taylor Greene right now, is that the higher you go in politics, the more people you are accountable to, the more you have to narrow down your focus, and the more you have to be willing to make room for lots of different virtues and lots of different expressions of virtue. And so, you can look at New York City and say, look, here is a very particular place with very particular culture and needs and ways of identifying and ways of being. And so they're going to solve their problems differently than Union, Kentucky, where I live, right? And so let people get closer and closer and more integrated around virtues where they are. But by the time we get to the House of Representatives, the first thing to me is just, how do we keep this body working and functioning? And I'm willing to work with anybody to make that happen.
Well, and I think what you see with the virtue of diversity with Americans playing out across these two election cycles is, no, we do not want people propped up or rewarded or favored because of their identity, including the members of that group feel that way. We do not want to be rewarded, favored, or propped up based on our identity. And also the answer is not to target, attack,
right,
or openly discriminate against us. I do believe that there is a middle ground in between those two extremes that will support and help the entirety of the diverse American populace flourish. I really do believe we're smart enough to, thread that needle between we're not going to openly target you and also we're not going to openly favor you. That seems to be what the American populace, particularly low propensity, low information, independent voters, are saying.
I hope that we made a step in the right direction in our conversation with Sarah McBride. I've been frustrated for her that most of the invitations that she gets to do national media are to talk about being transgender. And I'm happy to talk about that with her. But it was important to me to make a space for her to just show that she's like a really freaking good legislator, regardless of her identity, Not in spite of it, not because of it, just here she is on her own terms, really good at her job. And I think that's where people really would like to get. I think the vast majority of people are not hateful, are not looking to target anyone, and also are just here for who's competent. I just want to talk to competent people. I was listening to Sarah Longwell talk about one of her focus groups in Virginia this morning, and she said that so many people in the focus group said they really wanted to Winsome Sears because of her identity, because she is a Black woman, because she is a veteran. There are lots of firsts about her that made them want to like her. And they were and then I got to hear from her, And I think she's Looney Tunes. Like, that's what Sarah Longwell said the voters said. Like, they just thought she is not a coherent, competent person. And her identity doesn't get me there. And I feel like that's kind of the vibe across America right now. Like, your identity is not irrelevant to me, but it also doesn't get me across the finish line. And that's all we're looking for.
Well, and I would like us to all, to what we say to the party faithfuls, of which we need to, if we're going to fight in more places, if we're going to win in more places. So let's say with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene also has an identity we can learn from. Marjorie Taylor Greene also has a life experience that is important and relevant to our body politic. And if nothing else, then we should be able to say she has been rewarded by a large number of voters who see her as competent. What does that mean? Let's ask her about that. What is she proud of? What is she good at? What does she feel like her constituents reward? If it's undying fealty to Donald Trump, okay, then that's what it is. And she's going to learn the hard way what that means. But I do think it's worthwhile to listen to someone who has come up through this incredibly influential political movement and try to learn from that instead of just saying, yeah, but you were worse.
Yeah. And one of the things that she's good at is vulnerability. So I was watching her on Bill Maher, and there was a moment when they said something to her about the Jewish space laser controversy. She swears that's not how she said it. She also said in 2018, at the time, she did not know that the Rothschilds were Jewish.
Oh my gosh.
And the reaction from the panel was shitty. Like, you could just tell that there was a real, you're dumb, emanating from those people. And I thought, more people are like her than not.
Yeah.
Come on. And also, how few members of Congress have you seen anywhere admitting something they didn't know in 2018? So few. That's compelling. Like, that's welcoming. I'm the same person, but I'm realizing that some things were presented to me wrong is how a lot of people deal with changing their minds. Again, I'm just trying to take her on her own terms, because the consistent thread that I have seen with her from the second she came onto the political scene is just saying what she's thinking. And I think it's a lot truer from her than it's ever been from Donald Trump, because her life experience is a lot more like most Americans than Donald Trump's has ever been.
And also, is it a bad thing that the Rothschilds are decoupling from the idea, like a close link to Jewish identity? It feels like no to me. It feels like if this is becoming a word that is taking on like a conspiracy, elitist, like mythology. I mean, it was already the Rothschilds and the actual people. We know this from, past conversations. Like, it was already like spinning into myth and fable. So if it is spinning at such a rate that it is detaching from Jewish identity on the ground, and look, you see this everywhere. I don't want to go on a side quest. We've already been talking for a long time, but like, there is something very real happening with regards to anti-Semitism and Zionism and Israeli identity and the Jewish diaspora and American Jewish identity across generations on both sides of the political spectrum. Tectonic shifts. Like, to like this whole conversation around like Zionist Christians. And I mean, it's just, it feels a little bit like the Always Sunny in Philadelphia meme with the postcards and it's really something. Yeah. And I know that it is incredibly emotional and heartbreaking for, friends in my life who are Jewish. And I just want to say, like, as much as I can, I'm like seeing this and witnessing this, and I cannot imagine what it must be like to be walking through this moment in history, particularly as an American Jew. Like, I just think it's with the anti-Semitism and the violence and all the Nazi talk, and you also have Holocaust survivors dying. There's not going to be that many left, and there's this incredible, intense shift to the right in Israel. And it's probably like a series of 10 shows, but it keeps bubbling up because it is such a source of energy right now in our body politic. It is wild to me.
And I think it's happening with Muslims as well, and certainly people who are Palestinian and who love Palestinian people. I saw a Facebook post from a friend of mine who is Muslim just writing about what the Mamdani win means to her, and for that to have happened in New York where 9/11 took place, and just thinking about all the ways that she has lived and watched people talk about her faith and her community and people who look like her. And she was just saying, like, this is a seismic moment for us. And I think that's just happening all over the place right now. I do feel like just plates everywhere moving in big ways that are extremely personal and emotional. And I think ultimately necessary, to getting us to a more aspirational culture. At least one, I hope, for American Jews, where that connection to Israel is less used by people who don't actually care about it. I hope that's where we're going.
Well, I mean, it feels like a decoupling from identity politics, because the parties themselves have shifted and changed. I mean, if the extremes are always just either like a manifestation or like just a better way to illustrate what's happening, then the fact that you have like trans fascists is playing out in so many places of American life. You can't just say because someone's gay, they're always going to be a Democrat. There are lots of high-ranking gay people in this administration. Like, you can't just say because someone's pro-Israel, they're going to be on the Democratic side. It just doesn't, it's not shaking out that way anymore. The identities themselves are as complex as they ever were. And our politics has shattered and decentralized, particularly through the lens of our media, in a way that is just maybe revealing that to us in a way we can no longer ignore.
That's why elections are so fun, right? Because you just get some information. That, like, elections are the best prompt to say, where are we? What's happening? What might come next? So I think it's fun to dig into that, and I hope it was fun for all of you as we spend a lot of time here together.
Yes, I hope that everyone enjoyed this episode. We will be back in your ears tomorrow for an episode of Pantsuit Politics on the main feed with Governor Gretchen Whitmer. And until then, keep it nuanced, y'all.